Deep in the wilderness, where the world goes silent and the trees feel older than memory, some hikers discover things they wish they could forget. These aren't campfire tales or rumors. These are real encounters, terrifying moments buried far from any trail map. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true hiking horror stories. Hiking seems simple, just fresh air, open trails, and the quiet kind of freedom you can't find anywhere else. But for anyone who's spent real time deep in the woods, you know that nature has 2 faces. There's the peaceful one, where sunlight filters through the trees and the world feels slow and safe. And then there's the other face, the one that appears without warning. The one that makes your skin crawl and your instincts whisper that something is wrong. Because the truth is this: the deeper you go into the wilderness, the stranger things can become. Most people hike to escape the noise of life. But in that silence, your mind sharpens. You notice every sound, every shift in the air, every flicker of movement. And sometimes you begin noticing things that were already noticing you. Search and rescue teams know this better than anyone. They hear the stories, the ones hikers only share in quiet voices. Figures watching from tree lines, campsites that feel wrong, footsteps matching their own, and encounters with people who don't seem to live by the same rules as everyone else. Some hikers come back shaken. Some never come back at all. What you're about to hear are 3 true hiking horror stories told by the people who lived through them. Not exaggerated, not polished, just raw human fear in the middle of nowhere. So settle in, because each of these stories begins like an ordinary hike. But none of them end that way. I had been hiking solo for years, and by this point in my life, I thought I had seen everything the wilderness had to offer. Storms, fallen trails, wild animals, confusing terrain. But nothing prepares you for the moment you realize another human being is the real danger. And what happened that October proved that better than anything else. I was 4 hours into a hike through the remote parts of the Monongahela National Forest. It was a crisp, overcast day, cool enough for long sleeves but warm enough to keep a steady pace. I wasn't following a marked trail anymore, just navigating by instinct and a rough idea of the direction I wanted to go. I'd done this countless times, and I liked the challenge. Eventually, I reached a gorge, 30 or 40 feet deep with a rocky bottom and a narrow stream cutting through it. Crossing it wasn't impossible, but climbing down would have taken hours I didn't want to waste. Luckily, there was a massive fallen oak acting as a natural bridge. Its bark had been worn smooth by weather and, more than likely, other hikers. I tested it. Solid. Then stepped onto it and began crossing carefully, focusing on each step. The drop wasn't fatal, but it would definitely break something if I fell. When I finally reached the other side, adrenaline was still buzzing through me. That's when I heard it, a dull, rhythmic thunk, thunk, thunk. At first, I thought it might be a woodpecker, but then it grew louder, heavier, too controlled to be an animal. I turned around, and that's when I saw him. An older man, mid-50s, tall, wiry, wearing a filthy camo jacket and faded jeans. He was standing exactly where the fallen tree met the other side of the gorge, and in his hands was a full-size axe. He didn't speak. Instead, he raised the axe and buried it into the tree I had just crossed. I froze. He struck again, and again. Each swing was deliberate, purposeful, as if he'd been waiting for someone to cross. I shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" No response. He kept chopping. With every swing, the trunk vibrated slightly. My stomach dropped. He wasn't clearing a path or testing the wood. He was trying to cut the bridge down. "Stop! I just crossed that." He didn't even look at me. Then one swing landed deeper than the rest. The whole tree shifted with a groan. Panic surged through me. I yelled louder. Threats, insults, anything to get him to stop. Finally, he paused. He set the axe down gently, almost politely, and stepped closer to the edge of the gorge. When he looked up, I could finally see his eyes. Sunken, dark, almost lifeless. His expression didn't show anger or madness. It was calm, cold, like he'd been doing this for years. He leaned forward and said casually, "That's not my problem." Then he turned, picked up his axe, and walked back into the forest without another word. I didn't breathe for several seconds. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the forest. The tree was still lodged across the gorge, but now the side he had chopped was fractured and unstable. I couldn't risk crossing it again. With no cell service and miles of rough terrain ahead, I made the only choice I could: walk along the gorge until I found another crossing. But after an hour, the gorge only grew deeper. Every turn revealed more impossible terrain, as if I had entered a part of the forest that didn't want to let me out. And then I heard footsteps behind me. They weren't fast. They weren't aggressive. They were a following. When I turned, nothing. Silence. But as soon as I began moving again, the footsteps returned. Light, deliberate, keeping pace. I sped up. The footsteps sped up. I slowed down. They slowed. Adrenaline surged through me again. This time, it wasn't from crossing a fallen tree. It was survival. The forest had gone eerily quiet. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of someone tracking me. And they weren't trying to hide anymore. Up ahead, another fallen tree stretched across the gorge. Smaller, thinner, far less stable than the first. But I didn't have a choice. I climbed on and began crossing as quickly as I could without slipping. The wood groaned under my weight. Halfway across, I heard branches snapping violently behind me. I looked back. Not one man. 3. All of them looking almost identical to the first guy. Same dirty clothing, same dark eyes, same expressionless stare. One held a pipe. Another held a long stick. They didn't shout or run. They walked toward me with slow, heavy steps, as if they knew I had nowhere else to go. I forced myself across the tree, heart slamming against my ribs. When my feet touched solid ground, I turned around. One of the men stepped onto the log. But the moment it shifted beneath him, he backed off. They stood there on the other side of the gorge, staring at me with that same lifeless expression. After several seconds, one of them cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Get the hell out of here. You got lucky." I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I found the trailhead. When I got back to my car, my entire body was shaking so hard I could barely put the keys in the ignition. I reported what happened, but nothing came of it. No suspects, no reports, no evidence. To this day, the part that haunts me isn't that those men tried to trap me. It's the way they looked at me like they'd done it before, and like they expected me to never make it out.